There comes a moment when you finally feel the weight of your own generosity settling on your chest, not as pride, but as quiet exhaustion. A moment when you suddenly realize that giving without limits doesn't bring someone closer. It only pushes you further away from yourself. And as this awareness rises within you, almost like a forgotten tide reclaiming the shore, something ancient awakens. As Carl Jung said, what you resist not only persists, it grows. And maybe that is why your overgiving grew into an ache you could no longer carry. Take a breath. Allow the world around you to soften, because what we are touching now is not strategy, not manipulation, but truth. The truth you've been avoiding. The truth that when you fill every space with effort, a man has nowhere to arrive. When you solve everything, he has nothing left to offer. When you chase connection, he forgets how to reach for you. There is a boundary inside you, quiet and almost shy, that begins to form the moment you stop proving your worth through constant giving. A boundary that tells the world, I deserve to receive too. And men feel this shift instantly, not in your words, but in the new stillness of your presence. A stillness that makes him reconsider the comfort he took for granted. Because when you step back, not out of pride but out of self-respect, something remarkable happens. Space appears. And in that space, he senses what was invisible before. The beauty of effort, the meaning of pursuit, the value of your essence that was drowned in too much availability. Jung believed that the soul speaks through symbols, and your silence becomes exactly that, a symbol that whispers, if you want to stay, meet me halfway. And it is in this space, this sacred pause, that a man begins to return stronger. Not because you demanded it, but because you stopped carrying what was never yours alone. There is a very specific moment, subtle, almost imperceptible, when a man begins to feel the difference between a woman who overgives and a woman who has finally returned to herself. It doesn't happen when you cry, when you ask, when you explain. It happens when you soften into your own silence. When you stop trying to fill every space, solve every misunderstanding, or reassure every doubt he hasn't worked through himself. And something shifts inside him. Not dramatically, not loudly. More like a quiet realization that the emotional warmth he once took for granted is no longer reaching him in the same way. As Jung said, the soul becomes visible when the noise fades. And now that your noise, your over-effort, has dissolved, your soul begins to speak. He feels it most in the small moments. In how you are no longer the first to send a message. In how you listen more than you fix. In how your attention is no longer automatic, but intentional. And this absence, this gentle withdrawal, lands in him like a truth he has avoided for too long. Because when a woman stops overgiving, she stops shielding a man from the consequences of his own passivity. She stops giving him the illusion that connection can be one-sided. She stops allowing herself to be the bridge he never learned to build. Men don't return because you chase them. They return because the space you create forces them to face themselves. It reveals the gap between who they were and who they need to become in order to stand beside you. And here is the secret you were never taught. A man grows not where he is indulged, but where he is required to show up. Your space becomes that requirement. Your silence becomes that mirror. Your self-respect becomes that invitation. And in that invitation, something awakens in him. The desire to reconnect from a place of strength, not dependence. When you stop overgiving, you stop carrying his emotional weight. And only then can he feel where he must rise if he doesn't want to lose you. There is a forgotten truth about men that no one ever told you. They do not bond through being pursued. They bond through pursuing. And the moment your energy stops chasing, something ancient in him begins to stir. Not because he suddenly becomes wiser, but because the emotional dynamic finally returns to its natural order. When you overgive, you unintentionally remove his instinctive path toward you. You give him everything before he has earned anything. You offer understanding before he has offered effort. You create closeness before he has taken a single step forward. And while your heart does this out of love, his unconscious interprets it differently, as an imbalance. Jung believed the unconscious responds to patterns long before the mind understands them. And your overgiving creates a pattern in which he never has to rise. So he doesn't. Not because he doesn't care, but because he doesn't feel the inner necessity to move. But when you stop giving more than you receive, when you let your energy rest instead of overflow, something subtle and powerful happens. He feels the space between you for the first time. And that space activates his instinct to reconnect. Not out of fear, not out of ego, out of recognition. Recognition of your worth. Recognition of his lack of effort. Recognition of the quiet pull your absence now creates. He begins to wonder what you're thinking. He begins to notice the difference in your tone. He begins to feel the shift in your availability. Men do not miss your effort. They miss the loss of access to it. Your stillness becomes a signal. Your calm becomes a challenge. Your silence becomes an invitation he must earn again. And the most beautiful part? You are no longer draining yourself to keep the connection alive. You have stepped back into receiving, into allowing, into letting him carry his half of the emotional weight. This is where his strength begins to grow. This is where his effort begins to rise. This is where he starts returning, not weakly, but with intention. Because now the connection isn't fed by your overgiving. It is fed by his desire to meet the woman who no longer gives more than she receives. There is a quiet transformation that happens the moment you decide to stop pouring your energy into someone who isn't meeting you halfway. It isn't loud. It isn't dramatic. It feels more like a soft exhale after years of holding your breath. As if your soul finally whispers, "Let him come toward you." And in that moment, something inside you settles. Something that was trembling before becomes still. Something that was overextending finally returns to its natural shape. You step into receiving not as a tactic, but as a truth. The truth that love is not sustained by one person giving endlessly. Men feel this shift in a way they cannot explain. They sense the change in your presence before they understand it with their mind. Your energy is no longer reaching out. It is standing firmly where it belongs. As Carl Jung said, when the inner situation is not made conscious, it appears outside as fate. And your inner clarity begins to reorganize the world around you. Your calmness interrupts the pattern he grew comfortable with. Your quiet becomes a mirror that reflects his own absence. Your detachment isn't rejection, it is alignment. This is the power of receiving. You stop filling the space with effort, and suddenly he becomes aware of the space he was supposed to occupy. He starts noticing the emotional distance he once ignored. He starts sensing the effort he didn't give. He starts feeling the weight of your unspoken boundary, the boundary that says, "I will not carry both sides of this anymore." Receiving is not passive. Receiving is presence. Receiving is knowing your worth so deeply that you no longer rush to prove it. And in this new dynamic, the connection shifts. He begins to approach you with more intention. He chooses his words more carefully. He pays attention to the tone of your voice, the rhythm of your responses, the softness you no longer give so freely. What once felt like a guaranteed comfort suddenly becomes a privilege again, and men rise when something becomes valuable. They mature when they understand that access to your heart is earned, not assumed. You are no longer the woman who overextends. You are the woman he must meet. The woman whose energy no longer chases, but receives. And this is where he begins to return stronger. Not because you waited, but because you stopped waiting at all. There comes a moment, quiet, almost invisible, when a man begins to feel the subtle ache of losing what he once believed would always be there. It doesn't happen when you confront him or when you try to explain yourself into being valued. It happens when you stop trying. When your heart, once open like an endless river, becomes a calm lake he can no longer drink from without offering something in return. At first, he doesn't understand the shift. He feels something missing but can't name it. He reaches for the familiar comfort of your warmth, your attention, your endless giving. And for the first time, it's not there. Your energy, once overflowing toward him, now flows inward, back into the woman who had forgotten herself in the act of loving him. This is where the awakening begins. Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." And your new boundaries shine a light on his unconscious habits, the complacency, the passivity, the quiet expectation that you would always bridge the distance. Now he must confront what he contributed and what he didn't. He begins to notice the difference in your voice, the subtle neutrality in your responses, the absence of that emotional cushion he was accustomed to. He feels your presence, but no longer your pursuit. And it unsettles him in a way he never anticipated. Because men don't fear losing the woman who tries too hard. They fear losing the woman who stopped trying. Your silence becomes a teacher. Your stillness becomes a boundary. Your self-respect becomes the new truth he must navigate. And suddenly, he sees you clearly again. Not as someone who will always understand, always forgive, always try a little harder, but as a woman whose heart is no longer freely available unless he shows up with sincerity, effort, and intention. This is the moment his return begins. Not the weak return of convenience, but the conscious return born from the realization that your love is not an entitlement. It is an honor. And now, the dynamic shifts. He must approach. He must rebuild. He must rise. Because when you stopped overgiving, you didn't lose him. You found yourself. And in that discovery, he feels the undeniable pull to come back, stronger, clearer, and finally aware of what he stands to lose if he does not evolve. There is a moment in every woman's inner transformation when her energy changes so profoundly that a man has only two choices: rise to meet her, or quietly fall away. And this moment does not arrive with anger, ultimatums, or emotional storms. It arrives in stillness, the kind of stillness that comes from finally choosing yourself. Your heart is no longer a place where he can arrive carelessly. Your presence is no longer a soft landing for someone who has not learned to land on his own feet. The woman who once gave without limits now offers only what is reciprocated. And this shift, deep, silent, irrevocable, becomes the crossroads he cannot ignore. Jung said, "What you withdraw from becomes powerful." And your withdrawal from overgiving creates a gravity he has never felt before. He begins to sense the new version of you, even if you haven't spoken a single word about it. He feels the way your attention is no longer guaranteed. He notices the way you listen without rushing to fix, comfort, or carry. He recognizes that your emotional world is no longer orbiting around his needs. And this realization forces him into awareness. If he wants to stay in your life, he must contribute to it. If he wants closeness, he must create it. If he wants your heart, he must show his own. No more shortcuts. No more passivity. No more taking you for granted. This is where many men falter, not because you asked too much, but because they offered too little. And when he cannot rise, life gently removes him from your path, not as punishment, but as protection. Yet the man who is meant for you reacts differently. He leans in. He steadies himself. He begins to make room for growth he once avoided. Your new boundary becomes his invitation to step into maturity. He starts showing consistency where there was ambiguity. He chooses presence over convenience. He replaces excuses with effort. Because the woman who stops overgiving becomes a mirror, and only a man ready to face his own reflection can stand in front of her. This is the quiet beauty of your transformation. You are no longer holding on to anyone. You are holding on to yourself. And the man who is meant for you will return not because you chased him, but because your evolution awakened his own. There comes a point in your journey where you simply stop explaining yourself. Not out of coldness, not out of pride, but because your soul grows tired of offering clarity to someone who has not earned access to your inner world. And in that moment, something profound happens. He finally begins to listen. Before, your words wrapped around him like soft blankets, cushioning every misunderstanding, every inconsistency, every moment he didn't show up fully. You thought that expressing yourself more would bring him closer. But the more you explained, the less he understood, because he never had to reach for you. You were always already there, translating yourself into a language he didn't take the time to learn. Jung said, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed." But you were transforming alone. When you fall silent, not the silence of punishment, but the silence of self-respect, he feels that shift immediately. The emotional cushion is gone. The explanations he relied on are no longer available. The softness he once assumed would always be there now stands firmly behind a boundary he did not expect. And suddenly, he must engage with you differently. He must pay attention. He must observe instead of assume. He must interpret your energy rather than rely on your words to guide him. Your quiet becomes a mirror reflecting his own inconsistencies. Your restraint becomes a compass pointing to everything he ignored. Your presence becomes something he must work to understand rather than simply consume. This is where he begins to return, not to the woman who overgave, but to the woman who now expects reciprocity. He leans in closer, trying to feel what you're not saying. He chooses his words more carefully. He notices your pauses, your breaths, your newfound stillness. Because silence, when born from self-worth, is not distance, it is refinement. It is the moment you stop carrying emotional weight that was never yours. It is the moment he must carry his own. And ironically, this is when he begins to connect with you more deeply. Not because you explained yourself better, but because you finally stopped. Your silence is not a wall. It is an invitation to rise. And the man who is meant for you will hear it as clearly as if you had spoken the words out loud. There is a sacred turning point in a woman's life when she realizes she no longer needs to prove her worth. She only needs to embody it. And the moment you shift from proving to receiving, the entire dynamic with a man transforms. Not because he suddenly becomes different, but because you do. You've spent years offering reassurance before he even expressed doubt, affection before he earned intimacy, stability before he showed consistency. Your heart moved first, fast, and without hesitation. And he got used to it, not out of malice, but out of habit. A habit of receiving effort he never had to match. But when you stop overgiving and allow yourself to receive, something deep awakens in him, the awareness of your value. It doesn't happen dramatically. It happens in the quiet shifts. He feels it in the way you no longer rush to comfort him. He feels it in the way your messages no longer overflow with warmth. He feels it in the way your attention now arrives gently, only when it feels right. Your energy used to envelop him like a tide that never receded. Now it moves with intention. Now it responds instead of anticipates. Now it honors you first. And this is when a man begins to truly appreciate a woman, when her presence becomes a choice, not a guarantee. Jung said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." And who you are is not a woman who must chase love. You are a woman who attracts it by existing fully in herself. When you allow yourself to receive, you restore balance. You stop performing emotionally. You stop rescuing someone who hasn't learned how to show up. You stop filling spaces he was meant to step into. And he feels the vacuum, not as rejection, but as invitation. An invitation to participate, to initiate, to offer what he once assumed would come from you. Your openness becomes a field he wants to enter. Your softness becomes something he must earn. Your heart becomes a place of mutual exchange, not emotional labor. This is where he returns with more intention. Not because you demanded it, but because receiving shifted the dynamic from imbalance to truth. You become the woman he wants to give to, because now he feels what it means to receive you. There comes a moment when the entire relationship dynamic changes, not because he did something, but because you finally returned to yourself. Your emotional center, once placed gently in his hands, comes back home. And with that return, something powerful awakens in the space between you. You no longer orbit around his feelings. You no longer soften yourself to prevent his discomfort. You no longer adjust your needs to protect his ease. And this quiet reclaiming unsettles him in a way he cannot ignore. He feels the shift long before he understands it. Your heart, which once moved toward him without hesitation, now stands grounded. Your mind, once preoccupied with his validation, now focuses on your peace. Your energy, once extending endlessly outward, now flows inward with intention. This is not withdrawal. This is alignment. Jung taught that the soul reorganizes itself when truth enters consciousness. And your truth, the truth that you deserve balance, begins to reshape everything. He senses it in how you speak with more clarity and fewer explanations. He notices the absence of that subtle desperation you carried without knowing. He feels the quiet dignity in your presence, the dignity of a woman who no longer abandons herself for love. Your energy becomes rarer. Your attention becomes meaningful. Your time becomes something he must honor, not assume. And this creates a pressure inside him, not the kind that suffocates, but the kind that awakens. He begins to reflect on how lightly he held what was actually precious. He realizes that your overgiving was not his achievement, but your wound. And now that the wound is healing, the dynamic must evolve. He begins to rise, or he begins to fade. There is no middle path, because a woman who has returned to herself cannot be met halfway by someone who refuses to move. Yet the man who truly feels you, not just your body, not just your attention, but your soul, he senses that this is his moment to step forward. Your newfound stillness becomes his mirror. Your self-respect becomes his lesson. Your emotional independence becomes the force that pulls him toward growth. This is where he begins to reconnect from a deeper place, not with the woman who overgave, but with the woman who finally remembers her worth. There is a moment, soft, almost sacred, when a man who once moved carelessly through your heart begins to approach with a different energy. Not hurried, not entitled, not expectant, but aware. Aware in a way he wasn't before. Aware of what your presence truly meant. Aware of what your absence taught him. Aware of the woman who stopped overgiving, and in doing so, finally allowed herself to be seen. This is the moment he returns stronger. Not because you waited, not because you begged, but because you stopped shrinking yourself into the version he made comfortable. He comes back differently, with a gravity in his voice, with sincerity in his eyes, with an understanding that access to your heart is no longer simple, no longer assumed, no longer free. He knows now that your softness is a privilege, not a constant. Your time is a gift, not an obligation. Your love is a force, not a convenience. Jung said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." And your choice to accept yourself, fully, gently, courageously, becomes the catalyst for his transformation. He returns because he finally sees the truth. You were never asking for too much. He was simply giving too little. You were never difficult. You were deep. You were never needy. You were nurturing. You were never overwhelming. He was underdeveloped. Your evolution revealed the distance he had allowed to grow between you. And now, if he wants to walk beside you, he must come as a man who has faced himself, not one who hides behind excuses, inconsistencies, or emotional laziness. He approaches slowly, carefully, almost reverently, because he knows this version of you is not the one he left behind. You are no longer the woman who tries to earn love through effort. You have become the woman who receives love through truth. And here is the most powerful part. Whether he returns to stay or fades into memory, you have already won. Because the woman you are now, the one who knows her worth, the one who stands in quiet dignity, the one who stopped overgiving and started receiving, she is the woman who will never again settle for emotional breadcrumbs. She is the woman who inspires strength, devotion, presence. She is the woman who makes a man rise into the best version of himself. She is the woman who can only be met with love that expands her, not love that drains her. So if he returns stronger, it's because your growth demanded it. And if he doesn't, it's because your soul outgrew his limits. Either way, you have stepped into the kind of womanhood that makes the right man rise and the wrong man fall away. Your journey is not about him. It was always about you.